it's weird to see what woke activists are doing online because they seem less interested in pretending that their games are good, that people like them, or that they're worth buying or supporting, and they're more interested in gaslighting people over like stupid bullshit that doesn't really amount to anything, right? Silent Hill 2 has gotten a lot of pushback for all the changes it's made. It's made by a fraud team. It's there's all these red flags that aren't inherently woke, by the way. I think this is just basic, just incompetence on Koname's part, right? Um, Silent Hill 2 clearly has a lot of problems with it, but the woke community seems really adamant to try and pretend as if the complaints about wokeness have been debunked, right? That seems to be the big thing with them now, is that they seem to gaslight people into thinking that the woke counterculture is getting upset over something stupid, and then they come in and then they make these wild claims about how ridiculous and silly they are. Like, oh man, anti woke people don't actually play the games they talk about. It's like this weird like reverse psychology thing where they try and like apply their own stereotypes to their critics, right? Where they come out and they just embarrass themselves by like, aggressively talking all this nonsense about all these games and how silly like woke counterculture people are, and they keep making things up about the games. And I really can't emphasize this enough because, I've seen this a lot in like the One Piece community in particular, because you see a lot of posers come out and try and tell you things like the series is extremely progressive and that Yamato is a man and stuff like that, which obviously isn't true if you're like an actual fan of the series, but they try really hard to gaslight you that it is. And that also applies to a lot of Nintendo games. It applies to more well-received products, stuff like Western products, stuff like Joker, stuff like hmm, what's a good example? Like the narrative has always been that like what they're trying to do is they're trying to establish the idea that going woke and going broke is a myth when that's clearly been demonstrated to not be the case since the term was established, right? They are essentially trying to establish a narrative that that products are inherently woke and that they are going to be successful and that they're going to be popular, right? They are trying to undermine what woke what people have observed about the majority of products that have been failing lately, right? The historical inaccuracies, the girl boss shit, like the inability to make a good product, right? They seem to do this thing where they go out of their way to manufacture some narrative, some story, some fact about the series, and then try and twist that into meaning it's extremely progressive, right? Bayonetta 3, right? They tried passing off the character as a lesbian, right? And then when that was proven not to be the case, they created this narrative that the game bombed, but in reality it did perfectly well, and it's probably one of the most red-pilled games in existence. But this this should be an indication of just how deranged these people actually are, because it's a very cult-like mentality where they have to warp everything to suit their worldview and to be self-serving to the ideology, right? Things aren't allowed to simply just be high quality and people enjoy them. No, they are popular because they have a very strong woke message that resonates with the masses, with the people, with the ideology, right? Again, the big thing right now is gaslighting people into thinking go woke, go broke is not a real thing. And that's been clearly demonstrated to not be true, but they're working hard at it anyway. And I really wonder at what point people will start calling out a lot of these individuals because there's this guy like Kate Bush's husband on Twitter on X like who I keep seeing making all these wild like ridiculous posts about I don't even know because I don't really pay that much attention but like I've seen this individual just make these claims that are just easily proven wrong and yet his audience does this thing where they prop him up and try to make it out to be as if like he's completely right about everything he talks about. Again, the wokesters are like perpetually online weirdos, right? They are a fringe demographic that exists only online to try and gaslight people into thinking that there are much more there are much more um there are much more of them than there actually are, right? Maybe you're talking about like what, like the most politically indoctrinated people in the West, right? All like working in unison to try and push these narratives, to try and dismantle the patriarchy, to try and bring about a communist utopia, right? You have like all of these people working to make it happen, and yet they're not really getting anywhere, right? More and more, I'm seeing more people call them out on their nonsense, and um, with the Silent Hill 2 thing, the game is going to do well because it's Silent Hill, right? This is the same pattern we've always seen, right? Is that they get their hands on an established IP, they ruin it, people buy it, realize it's crap, and then they don't really support the IP after that, right? This isn't this isn't a process we've never seen before, right? This is what typically happens with Go Woke Go Broke. It doesn't happen overnight, right? Ubisoft is the most woke company there is. And only now are they starting to really feel the heat from everything they've done over the years. The historical inaccuracies, their pandering to woke ideology, right? It's only just now coming back to bite them. And it's not just like what they do with their games. It's how they treat their employees and their mission statements and how they behave and conduct themselves, right? People are upset with them more than because of what they do with their woke ideology, right? Again, this is kind of the issue with woke culture in general, is that woke culture does not cultivate talent. So even if you're talented, if you genuinely believe in the woke ideology and you believe in like propping up it as many like incompetent people as possible, eventually your company is going to collapse and you are going to produce a bad game. So one-off success stories like Baldur's Gate 3, what's that going to result in? There will never be a Baldur's Gate 4. Larian will move on to a less successful project. They'll get outdone by their competition. Again, we've seen this pattern with CD Projekt Red and BioWare already. Like, in a way, it doesn't matter how critically hyped your game is. It doesn't matter how many units you sell. Because if you don't establish a stable ecosystem of a company culture, right, you aren't going to be able to continue producing content, right? It simply isn't good enough to have one well-received game. And this inability to face that fact is why woke culture will never succeed.